Hi, Jared.
Madison, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. I've had a busy 2 weeks.
I feel you there. We've got a busy November over here at Doug.
Did everyone go enjoy the virtual DynamicsCon yesterday?
Yeah, it was very, very fun. Did you guys get a chance to attend?
I did.
On it. No, I was very deep into stuff.
It was
It's
very
always
fun. Long day, but very, very fun. Lots of great presentations going on.
Yeah, the post looked like it was really good.
Yeah, we'll post all of the sessions on YouTube as well in about a month. They take a little while to upload, but
Mhm.
we'll eventually get those up on YouTube if you weren't able to make it. You had some
Yeah,
good sessions.
I was already able to reach out to a few people and get the copies of their slide decks. Some really good visuals in there for all the stuff I have to explain to people.
Awesome.
So,
Glad
and
that you enjoyed it.
then I have been signed up for the Chicago event for a little bit now, although I did finally just pull the trigger and grab a hotel.
Oh, great. Well,
I've been
we
kind
are
of waiting for
super
my employer
excited.
to review the request, but I'll just have to gamble that.
We are very, very excited to have you in Chicago. It'll be very fun. It'll also be my first Dynamics Con. I joined Doug back in August, so I have never seen one in person, and I'm personally very excited to go.
Very cool. Well, I spent a couple years of my life living in Chicago, so visiting on
Oh,
the
nice.
company dime sounds like a good time.
Yeah, do you still have a few friends that live in Chicago?
I have some friends way out in the suburbs,
Oh, very fun.
and I'm probably going to just be flying in and not have a car, so I probably won't have a chance to see them.
Ah, still fun
Um,
to visit.
it
Visit a place that you
is,
lived.
yeah. I'm trying to not to get too personal with a group of people I don't know super well, but we have a parenting schedule with my stepson, and I happen to have him that week, but we're actually having an active conversation about maybe swapping that week with another so that my wife can come up and enjoy Chicago for a few days.
Oh, that would be really fun.
Yeah, would love to bring him, but taking him out of school for a couple of days is
Yeah.
very problematic.
I can understand that. Well, I'll have to ask you when we're there about food wrecks in the area.
Oh, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on that part of town, but I can tell you where the tourists go.
All right, we'll start there. All right, Dan, did you want to go ahead and take it away?
Sure, awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thanks, Nick, for being here to present. We were just talking about how it's been a long drawn out planning back from last spring to have Nick join us, and we're super excited to have him. Before we get to that, I'm just rotating through some slides. The one on here right now, or that was just on here, is a Canadian Regional in-person event, November 26th. So be sure to get signed up for that if you're able to attend. Lots of great content for the day. Yeah, we're really, really excited about the three tracks that we have: CRM, CE, Power Platform, and BC. Lots of great presenters. So join us in Toronto, November 26th. Other than that, Matt, maybe I'll just hand it over to you to do a Doug intro.
Yeah, perfect. Do you mind if I share my screen real quick?
You go ahead.
All right. Well, I will run through the Doug intro slides pretty quickly here so that we can get to our great presenter, Nick. I'm just going to give a quick introduction to Doug. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Madison Zulowitz, and I am the event coordinator here at Doug. Doug is essentially a free community for users, implementers, and resellers of Microsoft business applications. Our mission is to support Microsoft Dynamics 365, GP, and Power Platform. And we hope that these are educational sessions to help people grow personally and professionally in their careers. Our rules of engagement is we ask that these meetups are kept to be solely educational. So please no sales pitches. They are solely for the attendees to gain knowledge about a topic that our presenter is presenting on and to network with fellow people in the community. Dynamics User Group has multiple different platforms and programs. So we have an online open discussion forum. We have webinars. Like we were just talking about, we have conferences. We just had our virtual conference yesterday, and we have our largest conference of the year in Chicago in May of next year. We also have local meetups like this one, and these will also get posted to our YouTube channel. So if you're ever interested or curious to see what other meetups around the world are talking about, or if you missed one of these meetups, please go check out our YouTube, and the virtual ones are always posted there. We have our 2024 and 2025 regional meetups coming up. As Diane just mentioned, we have our Canadian regional coming up on November 26th in Toronto, Canada. This will be our first time out of the US, actually. So we're super, super excited. And these registrations have not been updated, but we actually have close to 180 registrations now. So if you are looking to come, I would definitely suggest signing up soon. We have a cutoff at 200, so tickets are running out. It's going to be an awesome event, a full day of education with multiple different tracks that are listed there. We are also going to have our Southeast Regional Meetup in January 15th in Tampa, Florida. Again, multiple day education sessions and lots of networking opportunities. We've also posted the rest of our 2025 regional meetups. These are all subject to change. Just as a side note, we're still figuring out the details of venues and things like that, but these are TBD locations and dates. We'll be having our Northeast Regional in February in Massachusetts, potentially a Pacific Northwest in Portland, Oregon, in March. We will be going to Colorado, Ghana, Kenya, Ohio, Texas, and Canada all next year. And the dates are also posted on our website. Once we know some more information, we'll continually update our website. And like I had mentioned before, we have our largest conference of the year, 2025 DynamicsCon from May 13th to the 16th of 2025. Don't know what happened to my screen here. There we go. Session submissions are now open. So if you are interested in speaking at DynamicsCon, please submit your session soon. I believe that closes November 30th, if I'm not mistaken. I'll double check and send it in the chat, but it is ending soon. So if you're interested in presenting, would definitely suggest submitting your session. And I will hand it back over to Diane. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Madison. Okay. So I think now, Nick, if you want to take it away, Nick's here to share with us Beginner's Guide to Power Pages. And you're on mute, Nick.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let me just get this going. And give me a second here. Microsoft Teams. Share my screen. Just want to get a verification. You guys can see my screen?
We sure can.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay, so today I'm going to talk about Beginner's Guide to Power Pages, or Ultimate Beginner's Guide. This is a talk I've done a few times before, so hopefully you'll get something out of it. If you've not touched Power Pages before, after this, then hopefully you'll be a total expert. I've submitted sessions to DynamicsCon already, so fingers crossed I get picked. I'm not sure who I have to maybe send some maple syrup to get selected, but hopefully I'll see some of you there. So anyways, just a little bit about myself. My name is Nick Doelman. I call myself an independent power platform specialist. I am kind of a freelancer. I work on projects around the world, do presentations like this, do some training. I'm currently, a large part of my capacity right now is for a large project in Norway. So I do find myself back and forth there quite a few times throughout the year. It's really exciting. I'm a Microsoft MVP, a certified trainer. If I'm not doing any of this power platform stuff, I'm actually doing powerlifting. I'm a competitive powerlifter. Currently in training for the next Canadian Nationals and the World Bench Press Championships, which will be held this spring. I also do a podcast with a really good friend of mine. We do a podcast every 2 weeks where we talk about all the new news and updates from Microsoft and the Power Platform community. That's called Power Platform Boost. We're on all the regular podcast channels, so check that out. There's my Twitter handle, and probably the best way to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. So if you have questions after this, or you think of something a few days or a few weeks later, do reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn. Just say that you saw my session as part of the Canadian user group. That way I kind of know get some context where things are coming from. But let's get into the content. All right, so first off, we're just going to talk a little bit about Power Pages is, and then I'm actually going to do mostly demo. I'm going to be building up a Power Pages site using a lot of the kind of latest ways and methods to do that. We'll talk a little bit about the data, the security, all the different things you can do with Power Pages. And hopefully I'll have a bit of time for questions at the end if you have questions on that, so we can kind of make sure you get the knowledge that you need. So let's sort of dive in and say, what exactly are Power Pages if you've never heard of them before? Really, at the end of the day, Power Pages is a platform to build websites. Very much like WordPress or Wix or some of these other ones. It's formerly known as Power Apps Portals, and before that, it was known as Dynamics 365 Online Portals. And before that, it was came all the way from an ISV product that was an add-on for Dynamics CRM called ADX Studio Portals. ADX Studio was a Canadian company. This product got acquired by Microsoft, and the consulting side of ADX Studio eventually thing moved its way into KPMG, I believe so. So anyways, that's where it kind of came from. So at the end of the day, yes, it is a website design tool, but what it allows you to do is to talk to your business data, talk to Dataverse. And I found in Power Platform projects or Dynamics 365 projects, Power Pages is always kind of a component of that, but you could also do a project where Power Pages completely stands on its own and you can build a website application. So I'm only going to talk about a small section of Power Pages today, but this is a diagram that was put together by an MVP in Australia, Danny Cahill, a good friend of mine. I helped him review and provided some content for this, but this really, if I was to kind of cover all the encompassing things about Power Pages, this is where it would come from, starting from an external facing website and all these different branches and things. We're just going to cover the basics today, but just know that this is a very feature-rich product, has a lot of different things and can cover a lot of different areas. Now, the key thing that I always want to tell people, because this is a very common question that comes up, is Power Pages, it runs on Dataverse. And of course, for those of you obviously know, Microsoft Dataverse is the data service engine that kind of runs behind Dynamics 365CE, and a lot of Power Platform type projects are based on Microsoft Dataverse. So really, when we talk about Power Pages, all of those websites, those links, those menu items, they're stored in Dataverse records. Now, this also allows you to talk, if you have a business application based on Dataverse, including Dynamics 365 for customer engagement, for example, Power Pages can talk directly to that data, allow your external stakeholders to securely interact with that data. So that's what really makes this very powerful. Of course, we could talk to other things using virtual tables. There are other integrations, but at the end of the day, you need Dataverse. You can't run a Power Pages site without it. Now, the other thing I really want to kind of hammer here is Power Pages is secure. In order to get any of your Dataverse data to appear on the World Wide Web, you actually need to go through the process to configure your table security permissions, to configure your web security roles, and all of these types of things. There's a lot to it to actually make the data visible to the external world. It used to be a few years ago, you would actually be kind of by default would be open and you would have to lock it down. Now it's already comes locked down and you pretty much have to unlock it. There also has some security checkers to make sure your site is secure. There's a lot of different tools. And I just sort of say, be aware of FUD. And FUD, I mean fear, uncertainty, and doubt, because every so often you'll see in the media, someone will say, oh, Power Pages is not secure. Power Pages leaked a bunch of data. I actually saw a couple of links today about that. And then when you drill down, it's follow the money, because actually this is an article put out by a security company trying to sell their security services around Power Pages, and they kind of made some, I'd say, some inaccurate information or misleading information. So again, just be aware of that and just know that Power Pages is secure. Other question I get quite often is, how much is this going to cost me? What is the licensing? This is retail pricing. This is in US dollars. Of course, we can convert that to Canadian. The exchange rate today, I don't even want to talk about the exchange rate because it's for the, unless you're actually getting paid in US dollars and converting them to Canadian. But anyways, the idea is here, for $200, this allows 100, I'd say, authenticated users, meaning users that would log in, and we will talk about that, to be able to log into your Power Pages site each month. Or if you have those anonymous users, people just going to your public site and checking things out, for $75 a month, you can have 500 of those users come to your site. Now, you can, as you buy more of these, the tiered pricing, it actually drops, the price drops. The other tip I would tell you is very much like buying a car. Don't pay retail. Always negotiate with your Microsoft rep. Depending if you have a unique use case, or you're a very large organization, or if you're a not-for-profit, there is other pricing schemes available to make Power Pages give you a good return on your investment. So just be aware of that. All right, so that's sort of the other, the high level stuff. Let's get more into the technical details. And I'm going to, before I dive too deep, there's a couple tools I'm going to show you today that I use to build Power Pages websites. The one that we're going to be spending probably the most of the time in is something called Power Pages Design Studio. This is that what you see is what you get designer. There's different workspaces. We have a Pages workspace, a styling workspace, data workspace, setup workspace, and a security workspace. And these workspaces, you can go in and configure your Power Pages site. Of course, it is a Microsoft product. So what does that mean? That means that there's going to be co-pilots popping where sometimes in your face, sometimes off to the side. Just be aware that Power Pages does have a series of co-pilots. Some are really, really good, very helpful. Some are, not so helpful, maybe a little distracting. And the other thing too is, with this, you can view your code in Visual Studio Code for the web. And I will talk a little bit about that as well, if there's some developers out there watching this. Okay. Next thing I'm going to talk about is the Power Pages management app. Now, at the end of the day, all of our configuration is being stored in Dataverse. And of course, if you've built or used Dynamics CRM or Dynamics 365 before, you know that you can go in and change that data using what we call a model-driven Power App. Same thing with Power Pages. It comes with, if you configure a Power Pages site, there is that model-driven app. It is the Power Pages management app, where you can go in and fine-tune everything. This is how I would say, in the old days, when I say old days, 4 years ago, when we were configuring Power Apps portals, websites, this was pretty much the only tool that we would work in. Not that user-friendly, but it does really have those fine-tuning things. So this is something you still need to be aware of, and you still need to go into it. Now, I will be going into it just a little bit today, but for the most part, it is something that's pretty important if you're building Power Pages sites. Now, you probably heard I said the magic word. When I said Copilot, you probably all took a drink because you keep hearing it all the time. And yeah, like I said, Power Pages does have a series of Copilots. We're going to take a look at a few. You can create a site, you can create a web page, you can create a form, you can add some text and get AI to generate your static content text. You can add an AI-powered chatbot. You can generate some answers from your public data to have that available in your chatbot. If you're a developer and you're creating code for Power Pages, yes, you can use the GitHub Copilot in Visual Studio Code, or it also has a Copilot in the Visual Studio Code for the web as well to generate some of that code. It is getting really, really good. We're actually, I had to do some coding where some of this code before would have taken me at least a few hours. I was able to generate it in a few minutes. So kind of scary, but kind of good. But again, my to-do list doesn't shrink with all this AI tools. So not too worried about losing my job just yet. We can do FAQs, there's form fillings, and list those of visualization as some of the new things that have been added. Now remember, when I say Copilot, I'm not saying pilot. I'm always a big fan of Copilots. It can do a lot, but I'm also very cautious. I'm always evaluating the content and the information generated by Copilot, including the code, making sure it's going to work properly, making sure it's not going to do anything wrong. Copilot is still learning. We like to think of it as like a 2-year-old child. we're pretty amazed that these 2-year-olds can do all these great things, but also they can make a mess very, very easily. So that's sort of, I think, where AI is now. And of course, it's advancing quite a bit. In my opinion, the human touch really is the valuable, and that's the creative side that we can bring to this. And again, Copilot's more of a tool than more of an answer. And again, a little bit of my own personal opinion there. And then, like I did mention before, Power Pages is very much pro developer friendly. With any Power Platform project, we all know that we can get to 80 to 90% of the way using a low code, no code approach, configuring our applications and all of these things. But we always, a lot of times in a project, we will need the developer to kind of make us cross the finish line or do those edge cases. Power Pages is very similar. I would actually say we'd probably bring in a developer sometimes a little bit earlier, depending on our use case. It has that full pro developer experience. I work in a Fusion team right now where we do have developers and we do have, I would say, low code makers involved. Great collaboration experiences with that. Of course, you can use the regular tools that you're used to, Visual Studio Code, and you can update the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and also something called Liquid. Now, Liquid is a markup language that Power Pages utilizes. It is the same markup language used for Spotify. It is sort of an industry standard, even though it's a little bit kind of outside the Microsoft realm. Again, this sort of came from the ADX Studio days, but it is pretty powerful, and there's a lot of cool things you can do. I'm not going to go too heavily into the dev side today. I'm going to stick to the maker side and the basics, but just be aware, if you are a pro developer, this platform is pretty pro developer friendly. All right, so I'm going to dive into a demo, and before we do that, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown what it is we're going to do today. So basically, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to create a site. We're going to use Copilot to create that Power Pages website. We're going to add a static web page. Then we're going to do the magic where we're going to add a page showing Dataverse data directly from our backend business system. We're going to add a page where we can actually add or edit Dataverse records directly, so our end users will have that ability, and basically show you how that we can make sure that only the data that are logged in users allowed to see. Talk a little bit about that user authentication. So I'm going to pop out of my PowerPoint deck. And I'm here now on, I'm going to see if I can make this a little bit bigger. And I just want to do another verification. You folks can still see my screen. You should see a screen that says start building your website with Copilot.
Yes, we can see that, Nick.
Awesome, cool. If anytime you don't see anything or things aren't moving, just definitely let me know. So anyways, this is what we call the Power Pages homepage. This is sort of, we can get there by going to make.microsoft.com. If you're using Power Apps, it does sort of have that shortcut on the side here. If you're coming from Power Apps or some of the other tools that you get as part of the Power Platform. And first thing we could do here is we can create a site with a template. We can start from blank, but let's actually use Copilot to create the site. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say create a site for the upcoming Dynamics our user group in Toronto on November 26th. And I'm just going to let that. And now what Copilot is doing, it's going out, it's going to say, oh, we're going to give your site a name. Perfect. Now I can go in and modify this a little bit as well. Of course, also choose the language. It says .powerapps.portals.com. Know that we can actually give it our own custom URL. We're going to need a certificate and all that stuff for it. We could do that later, but just be aware we do have that ability. I'm just going to hit next. And now it's giving me basically a layout of this particular website and different color scheme. It looks okay. But what I could do is if I wanted to, I could go and edit the description and keep making changes and keep reiterating using the Copilot to give me different layouts and different things like that. Now, of course, once we generate this, we can go in and change pretty much everything. But again, I really just want to kind of point out that this is sort of one way we can do it. I'm just going to leave that. It looks fine for what I'm doing here. And then it's going to give me a bunch of other common pages I want to add. So yes, maybe I do want an About Us, maybe a speaker listing page, maybe some registration, a couple pages like that. I can pick and choose, or I can even regenerate some of these as well if I want to do a different design, different layout. This all looks good for now. I'm going to hit done. And then now what it's going to do is going to generate that Power Pages website. So a couple things are happening here. First thing it's doing is actually creating an Azure web app in my Azure tenant. That's what's going to be reading the information from Dataverse to display the web page to all of my external people that are going to be coming to my site. And it's also creating some of that metadata, the website configuration, and it's saving that as Dataverse records. Like I said, Power Pages runs on Dataverse. It's the engine that kind of controls everything. So that's what that process is doing right now. And it's actually coming up. It's getting things ready. And you'll see that this process is pretty quick. When I first started doing this demonstration years ago, I would actually have to make sure I would have provisioned my Power Pages site well in advance because it would literally take anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. And then here we are. It actually came up very quickly into the Power Pages Design Studio. So now this will allow me to go in and begin to design and work on this. So we can see here, welcome to the Dynamics user group. Join us in Toronto on November 26th. Maybe I want to edit that a little bit, put that there. I think it's at the Pantasia's Hotel. Just little things like that. So you can see that with this is sort of that what you see is what you get interface, and I can begin to design my Power Pages website. Of course, I have Copilot to the side here as well. What I can do is I'm going to say, I can say, I can use Copilot. I can say, create a page showing sessions that will be at the event. And I've just given Copilot that prompt. And again, like everything Copilot, it's all about the prompting and trying to get it to do that. So it's actually going through generating particularly a page now. I'm hoping it's doing that anyway. And it's giving me kind of some information about a keynote, an expert panel, all this stuff. Again, I can keep reiterating, I can keep it or I can delete it. And I can go in and edit it. So that's sort of one way we can approach on building our sites. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete that page. I'm not going to keep it. I'm going to do it the old school way because this is how I like to do it. I like to have a little bit more control and design things from ground up. I'm going to create a brand new page. I'm going to call this, session info. I'm going to add that to the main navigation, meaning it's going to show up in the menu. I'm going to choose from my standard layouts. I have a blank. I have different layouts here. If I wanted, I could also build some custom layouts. I don't have those right now, but then it goes a little bit beyond the scope of what I'll talk about today, but I'll just start with blank. But we can create our own custom reusable layouts. And then here we have very much, like I said, what you see is what you get. We can begin to add different components. So I'm just going to start out by adding a text component, and I'm going to make this heading 2. And I'm going to just sort of say, session info. And this is all good. And then what I can do here is I can begin to make some adjustments. I'm going to add a spacer, and I'm going to add a 2-column section, and I can begin to change and add different sections and that kind of thing. What I'm going to do is add some text here. And again, I have Copilot, and I can say, I can write some info about the sessions that will be presented at the event. I guess that's very vague. So I'd probably want to be much more specific. It's given me some nice marketing blurb or of some sort. Again, you saw I could have adjusted the tone, the length, different things here. We'll put that there. And then another component I could add here, I can add an image. We don't have the generation images yet. So I'm not sure if that's ever going to come, but we'll see. Here I have some of the existing media. I can go to stock images. These are the same stock images that you would see in Microsoft Office. Let's add one of these. That's kind of cool. or I could actually pick some other icons or illustrations, or of course I could upload my own images into that library and use those on my site. So I have that. Now it is stacking. Power Pages is using Bootstrap version 5, so you do have that responsiveness because it's stacking. Because I did the screen exploding here, I've got this here now, so I can actually see my page. I can make a few little adjustments. I'm going to change some of this, the columns and the spacing here a little bit to shrink that down. This looks a little bit better. I can change things like the background color, the different layouts. I can make this more, let's make this more centered. Where did I see that? Oh yeah, here we go. Let's center that. And I even want to make it bold. So there's a lot of different things that I can do here to modify without having to go into anything to really, make this a little bit harder. So I've done that. And then what I can do is I can just quickly preview this. And it's going to want some permissions here. That's okay. And what this is going to be doing, it's going to actually show me what my site, well, actually, it's going to show me a private version of that site. This site is not accessible to the whole outside world yet, because we actually want to kind of work in the developer side and keep it private and only allow some of our own collaborators to see it. Then when it's good, then we can publish it to the outside world. So we do need to give this a minute or two to kind of warm through. It is coming up. That didn't quite look like it was supposed to. I don't think it quite saved in time. Of course, maybe I didn't do enough proper sacrifices to the demo gods this morning. But anyway, let me just kind of go back here, see if I can get this to, should be, now with the sync, I shouldn't have to do that either. But anyways, you get the idea that actually I can make the design here and then actually show it on my site. It is using caching, so that's why sometimes the first time it's a little bit slow. With the caching, that does allow your site to run more efficiently. Just know in terms of performance, if you have the proper licensing, Power Pages websites can handle tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of users. Still not sure why I'm not getting my site refreshed here. But anyways, I'm just going to go to the home page. You can actually see the website here, basically just sort of displaying and rendering properly. Now, that's all well and good. You're probably thinking, that's great. Well, you'd probably think it's a lot greater if I could actually get this to show up. Like I said, I'm not sure why. That might take a minute. But the idea here is that you can see is when you're building a Power Pages website, then you can actually begin to show this pretty quickly. But you're also thinking, wait a minute, I could do this in WordPress. I could do this in Wix. I could do this in a whole bunch of other tools that are probably a lot less expensive than Power Pages. For that matter, if you're kind of a web designer from way back, you could probably say, you know what, I could do this in Notepad and just save that file to Azure or something and display that as well. And you're absolutely right, you can do this. But here's where the magic comes in. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the other site that I created a little bit earlier, just because I have a few other settings that I've done there already. But here's where we can actually begin to expose information in Dataverse. So if we have a backend system, we can begin to expose that data. So I'm going to go into something here called the data workspace. And this is our way into Dataverse. I could go in and I could create brand new tables in here, brand new forms, views, those types of things. I've already done that. I've created sort of an event registration site. So I have my sessions. I've created a table in Dataverse called sessions. And that's just a regular custom table. And you can see here in the data, I have a bunch of different records here, Power Apps, Power Automate. So a bunch of different sessions. I can actually, let me turn on to see all of the particular columns. So we have that, we have the durations in here, and then we even have the descriptions here and our speakers. So just think about those speakers for a minute. These are lookups to the contact records. If you've used Dynamics 365 customer engagement before or Dataverse, you know that out of the box, there is a contact table that stores people or person records. So we see that we have the lookup and we call those, we're looking up, we're calling that relationship our speakers. We have information about the different events. So this is data that we already have in Dataverse, presumably from a model-driven app that I created earlier. Now from this, I can actually take a look at my views, and my views really are that list of data. So these are basically the same type of views that if you've created a model-driven Power App, same type of tools. I can go in, I can add a column, I could add my filtering. So if you've built model-driven apps, you're probably very familiar with this user interface. It's the exact same, although it's embedded in Power Pages. So I have a view here, my session name, description, date and time, the duration, who the speaker is. That's all good. If I take a look at my forms, again, I have my website form, which is showing one record at a time. And again, this is using the same tools that we would use to build model-driven apps. So we have the choice, if we already have model-driven apps existing, we could reuse some of those forms, or we might have a slightly different form. That's typically what I do in these projects, is I create forms specifically for my Power Pages sites. Same thing, I can go and add different fields. I can change some of the properties here. And then basically, and even add or enable code components. So here I've enabled the rich text editor code component. You see here on the rating, I've added a star rating. So if you're used to things these are called PCF components. This is where you get a pro developer to make some of these unique user interface components. Power Pages supports these as well. All right. So I've created my list, I've created my view. Now this normally would have taken me a bit more time, but I prepared those earlier. So now that I got those set up, what I'm going to use them to build some web pages. So I'm going to go back to my pages site here. And what I'm going to do is going to create a new page, the same as I did before. I'm going to call this list. I'm going to call that list of sessions, or I'm just going to call it sessions for now. Going to add that to the main navigation because we're going to want to have our users be able to find this. I'm going to just choose the blank layout. And so far, so good. Now what I want to do is, again, I'm going to give it a title. Just basically breakout sessions. I'll change that to heading 2. What I'll do here is I'm just going to add a bit of a spacer. Let's do this. And now I'm going to go and take a look at my data components. So we see here the connected to data. I have a card gallery, form, multi-step form list, even Power BI. And I can even get my developers to create some custom components as well. So to show information in different ways. This is a fairly new feature. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create my list. And again, there's some preview features about AI insights, some of the other things. I'm going to leave those off for now. I'm going to choose the table. This is the Dataverse table that I want to choose. I'm going to choose session. And here was that website sessions view that I selected earlier. And I just could give it a name. I'm just going to leave the name there for now. And once I'm done here, I'm just going to hit done. And now it's rendered that list component on my web page. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh no, what's going to happen is now I'll be able to show Dataverse on a publicly accessible website. Well, that's actually not the case because this is locked down. Before anybody's even allowed to see that information, you need to set up your permissions. So here it's already prompting me to set up my permission on this list so it could be seen by my site visitors. I'm going to hit new permission. It's going to fill in some values. I'm going to give it global access because this is public information. I'm cool with people seeing what sessions are going to be at this event. I'm just going to give them read access, and then I'm going to choose my security rules. So here I'm just going to choose the anonymous users, so anybody that visits the site, as well as the authenticated users, so anybody that logs into the site. If I wanted, I could go in and create my own custom security web roles as well, but for now, I'm just going to choose these two. That's been set up. We're going to save this. And again, when I'm saving these types of configurations, they are being stored in Dataverse. So actually, if I do need to make some fine tuning, I will be able to do that. All right, so we have our list configured. We've added some permissions. Let's actually hit preview now and just take a look at what it's going to look like. So we see here it's spitting. That means it's going to get the latest version of our web page. I'm just going to take a bit of water because I've been talking kind of nonstop. And voila, I'll increase the size of this. And we can see here that we have our list of breakout sessions that came from that Dataverse table rendered on our particular website page. So this is where things get really cool, right? Because all of a sudden I was able to create a brand new website. I was able to create a new web page. And again, that type of thing, pretty much all the tools available out there will allow you to do that. But now what I could do here that I can't do in all these other tools pretty much is to display actual Dataverse information directly on here, and also set up some security around it that I actually had to specify anonymous users to visit that. And that took me, I don't know what, 10, 15 minutes basically. So that's basically goes to show what Power Pages can do, make it powerful. Now, the question is, I said, that's great, but we can see all of these particular records here. How can we make this more secure? Maybe we have a business requirement where we only want the speakers to be able to view their own sessions and edit them, yet we don't want anybody else to kind of go in and see all that. So what we can do there is we can begin to set up specific web roles and rules around that. But then we also need, whoops, I'm getting some there. I'm also getting the ability to log into the site. So here I have a sign in. And this is where we would set up for allow our users to sign into the site. Now, we have an external account that's using Microsoft Entra ID, meaning I could sign in with my Entra account. We can configure other external authentication providers. So if you actually are setting up the site in a production sense, I would highly, highly recommend not using this local authentication. That's sort of a great way for testing, a great way for me to do a demo, but really want to use an external provider like Azure AD B2C. Microsoft is now previewing the Entra external ID. The project I'm working on now is using Okta as an external provider. I'm not sure if you've heard of Okta, but it's another one of these things, allowing my external users to log into my Power Pages website. Now, if I just come off the street, what I can do is I can register. And same thing, if you sign up for anything else, I can register, create a brand new account. What that will do, it will create a contact record in Dataverse, and then I'm able to, maybe through an administrator or some other kind of automation, is provide permissions that way. Typically, if I just sign up, I might not have any permissions yet. Or if I already have existing users in my site, and that's what we'll talk about next, is we'll be able to redeem the invitation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my design studio. I'm going to launch the Power Pages management app, which is that model-driven Power app where I can manage a lot of this Dataverse information. Let me make that a little bit bigger for you all to see. And then here I have, you can see we have a lot of that configuration, websites, page templates, a lot of other kind of more complex features here. But what I'm going to do is go to security, go to contacts. And here's where we're going to see a list of just my regular Dataverse contacts. If I get the view right. So we see here, we have a lot of these people. That's great. We know that, for instance, Scott Konersman is one of my speakers, but he might not have access to my Power Pages site yet. Fair enough. But so what we want to do is invite him. We don't want to tell Scott, you know what, just go and create a brand new registration and we'll hook you up. Because he already exists in our Dataverse, we actually want to instead send him an invitation. I'm sure if you've worked in a Dynamics 365 project or a Power Platform project, probably a lot of you have run into having duplicates before. We want to try to avoid all that. So basically here, I'm going to create an invitation. And what that will do, it's going to create a brand new Dataverse record called invitation. I'm going to save it. And then by saving it, it's going to generate a kind of redemption code. So if I look on the advanced, I see this invitation code. Now, what I typically do in projects is if this is the method we're going to use to invite our existing users, I would set up a Power Automate method to send out the link in an email, or maybe even send it in a Teams channel or an SMS or something that they're able to get that and click on it and work through it that way. Here, I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to go back to the site. And instead of registering for a brand new account, instead I'm going to go to redeem invitation. I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to hit register. And now it's redeeming that code. We see here that's the email, that's the user. For now, I'm just going to use the same name. Just going to Control-C, copy that. going to put in a new, and like I said, this is using the forms-based authentication. I, again, would recommend using an external account. That goes above and beyond what we can do today. It takes a bit to set up those authentication providers, but it is an important process. So I've created this, it's going through, and then what this is doing is, I've now, if you've noticed, I'm now signed in as Scott Konersman, so he's now able to get into the site. But we still see all of the different breakout sessions. We want to filter it down that Scott can only see the 2 sessions. So how we would do that, we would go back to the design studio, and I'm actually going to go into the permissions for this particular record. We see here at our website permissions, we've got that set up. We set that to global access. In our data model, if I were to go back into the data workspace, remember earlier when we were taking a look at those sessions that we had a lookup to the contact record. So I'm just going to go here. Here we are. So we have that lookup. Because we have that relationship to our Dataverse contact record, this is going to allow us to set up the table permissions to filter that out. So I'm going to go back into my pages, go into that table permissions, and then change that from global access. I'm going to change that to contact access. It's going to look for that schema name between those 2 tables. So that's a little bit technical. And then here I want my speaker to be able not only to read, but also maybe to update and attach things to that particular speaking record. So I'm going to save this. And again, it's going to give me a warning. Actually, oh, no, hold on a second. I want to remove the anonymous access because I no longer want my anonymous users to view that particular data. So I've removed that. It's filtering on the contact. I'm going to hit save and should shut down Slack. All right, so we have this. The other thing I need to do is remember, because we have that link to our contact record, I am also going to have to add child permissions to allow links to that contact record again, because now we're getting into a situation where we're linking multiple Dataverse tables. This is again showing how secure Power Pages is, because we do have the ability to lock everything down. I'm going to need the contact. I'm going to again use that relationship, and I'm just going to allow the append and the append to. I'm not going to allow any changes being made to the contact table. But that's a child permission, meaning it still has to inherit that from the sessions. That goes a little bit, that's probably the most complex thing I really talk about today. But just know that Power Pages is secure in terms of what data you can see and how you can work with it. So now that I've set up my permissions, if I were to preview this particular website again, we see here it's spinning. Notice now it's now filtered down. Scott no longer has access to any of that other information. It's only showing the sessions that he has access to. So again, that's beginning to show you that with Power Pages, we can begin to show, like for our customers, only allow our customers to see their sales orders, only allow them to see their support cases, only allow them to see their own registrations for an event. So this is where it's important to have those Power Pages table permissions set up. Now, that's great. We can view data. Let's give Scott the ability to go in and edit his data to allow our external users to write back to Dataverse. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new child page, and I'm going to call this edit session. I'm not going to make it part of the navigation. We don't want our users to be able to navigate directly to that page for a couple reasons, which I'll get into. We're going to leave that. I'm going to add that here. And now instead of adding a list component, I'm going to instead add the form component. Now, again, this is where we have co-pilots everywhere. Copilot's going to want us to create a form and everything. This is one of the most useless co-pilots. I'm sorry to be blunt about this, but at this point, it's going to create a table. It's going to create a whole mess. I'm going to avoid that co-pilot. And instead, I'm just going to hit new form. And I'm going to go to my session table. And I'm going to have to pick one of my model-driven app forms that I created earlier. So there's that website session. And here, the other thing I like to do from a naming convention standpoint, I like to say edit session, because we're in a model-driven app, we can actually create new records, we can edit records, we can read records using the same model-driven app form. In Power Pages, a form can only do one item, so it could only edit or it could only create. So we actually need to create multiple forms for our Power Pages side, but we could use the same model-driven app form as the foundation. So I'm just going to call that edit session, and what's going to happen on the data side, here it's going to define whether I want to create a new record. Instead, I want to update an existing record. And that's why I said when I meant that we have to create different forms for the different tasks. On submit, I can just have it display a message that it's been successfully submitted. But what I will do is actually just redirect to a page. I want it to go back to my list of sessions. So I'll choose this. I'm going to shut off CAPTCHA for now. It is important that you turn on or have some sort of security so the bots don't pre-fill in the forms and pollute your Dataverse tables, but for now, we'll leave that off. I'm not going to touch attachments because we don't have any attachments, but it is something if you want to upload a resume or upload a profile pic or something, you could do this. And I'm not going to enable the form assistance actually, I'm going to shut that off because basically this will kind of pre-fill in the form for you or allow you to fill in the forms using AI. I'm going to hit OK here. And we see here that this shows up with the session name, the speaker, the description, and I can go in and I can begin to move things around. I can rearrange them a little bit. I can add a description. I can add custom error messages. I can do quite a bit of extra configuration on this particular form. I'm going to leave most of that off for now. This looks good as is. Now, the problem is as soon as I try to view that form, I'm going to get an error message because I don't know, it doesn't know what record to view. So we're going to have to wire that into something. So the best thing to do is wire that back into our list of sessions. So I'm going to choose this. And here I'm going to go back and edit my list. And I'm going to go to the Actions tab. So in the Actions, I want to edit the record. I'm going to turn this on. And then I'm going to choose my target type, a web page, because remember we created that web page, and it's going to be that edit session page. I'm going to give it the label. That's all good. And there's different things that we can do here as well. So I'm just going to hit done. So now that's configured. Notice here that we already have a little bit of a hyperlink or a little drill down here. Site. And notice I'm always hitting the preview here as well, as opposed to just going to my website and hitting F5. The reason I do that is, again, because of caching. Caching, if we go through and just refresh, we're not going to get the latest and greatest. So we want to do that. So here we see, here's our breakout sessions. Again, it's just Scott because that's who we're logged in as. If I were to log out, for example, if I was to log out or sign out, because anonymous users don't have permissions, they don't see any of these records. So what I will do is I'll go and see if I can remember, yes, here, someone, and see if I can remember the password I gave. Password 123, super secure. And I'm back in here, and now I have this drill down, and I can hit edit and see what's coming up now in that web page is the ability to edit this session. So I'm going to change this, make that a little bit more cleaner. We're going to change the duration from 30 to 45 minutes. We have the sponsor info here. I'm just going to hit submit. And what this is doing, it's writing that information back to Dataverse, and we see immediately that's automatically reflected. So the talking between Power Pages and Dataverse, it isn't an integration. It's actually talking directly to the Dataverse information. So that's kind of a very quick way to build a Power Pages site that's data-driven. So far what we've done is we have created a brand new website. We've created a web page with some static information with like text and an image. And then we've also created a site where we see a list of data from Dataverse. We've been able to lock it down based on the authenticated user. I showed you how a user can be authenticated and logged in, and then even how that particular user has the ability to update their own data. And again, how we can control that a little bit. So I'm going to go back to my presentation here and kind of go back to what we've covered off. So we've done all this, we've created the site, we've showed the Copilot way and the manual way, we've showed the Dataverse records, we've edited the records, we've registered our user as well. What I do want to talk about, because like I said earlier, there are so many other features of Power Pages, things that you might want to look into. If you've done Power Apps portals in the past, Power Apps portals is Power Pages. So even if you see older content, older videos, or older community content that they refer to Power Apps portals, including the content that I've created, that all pretty much all applies to Power Pages, most of the recent stuff anyway. What you can do if you want to make different layouts and different designs, you can use Liquid. You can create your own custom web templates, your own web template controls, put those in your site, make your site not look like a Power Pages site. You can even take it a step further using the portal's web API. This is where we have the pro dev stuff, where we're not just doing form submits, but we can interact much more interactively with Dataverse. Of course, we can do things like SharePoint, Power BI, chatbots. We can create calendar and map views. We can launch Power Automate flows, which is pretty interesting as well, because we can utilize Power Automate to do a lot of that other processing. And you have Power Pages talk to a whole bunch of different systems using those custom connectors. And really, at the end of the day, we can use Power Pages to extend our existing Power Platform projects. So if you already, your customers are already using, or if you're using something like Dynamics 365, customer service, the cases and knowledge base articles, this is something that you could extend to your external customers so they can go in and log their own cases and see the progress there. So a lot of cool stuff. So here's what I want you folks to do. I want you to go and create a Power Pages developer site. You can go to aka.ms/mppp or just go into the Power Pages link on a developer environment. You can try the Copilots, try building your site. There's a great community out there. Obviously, you're here, the Dynamics user group, and so you're already part of the community. You can go to Microsoft Learn and learn a lot about Power Pages there. The documentation is still very good. I used to work there, so I've done a lot of the work in the documentation when I was at Microsoft. So a lot of good info here as well. So I've been talking nonstop for the past 30 some minutes. I've shown you a lot of stuff. Hopefully I haven't completely overwhelmed you, but what I want to do is now kind of turn it to you if you folks have any questions about this technology.
I don't see any questions in the chat, Nick. Thank you for that. A few of the things that I took away was understanding that Copilot's still like a 2-year-old, and there's room to just, double check what it's doing for us, and that human touch just doesn't go away immediately. So thank you for that. And the other piece was low code, no code, and developers. It's a great opportunity for collaboration, and I think we need to continue to remind ourselves about that piece as well. A question I had around authenticated users. So the $200,
yeah,
whatever that works out to Canadian, we've decided we're not talking about that today. When you open that up and people can register, how does that work? Do you purchase a set amount of licenses to begin with? And if you've, invited people, or people go to your website and register, what happens?
That's a great question. So typically there's two ways. The way that most people do it is you buy a user pack. So that user pack for $200 gives you, I think like I said, it gives 100 users per month, or let me go back to, hold on. Here we go. Yeah, for 100 users per site per month. So let's just say if you have 500, let's say you have a membership organization where those folks are going to log into the site at least, a couple times a month or whatever, they're going to log into the site, then you would probably try to scale it to get 200 times 5. So you're paying $1,000 per month. That will give you the maximum capacity of 100 or 500 users per month. Now, as soon as you hit user 501, they're not going to be dropped or blocked from entering your site. There's always a little bit of wiggle room in there. if this is going to be consistent, that's where Microsoft will probably come and send you an email or a notice, very much like if you're over your Dataverse capacity, you get those warning messages, that type of thing. Now, let's just say you have, again, I'm going to say 500 user membership, but yeah, the average user only logs in once every couple of months or even once a year. Well, then what you could do is you could actually reduce the number of users. So you try to adjust the scale, and there's a lot of reporting in the Power Platform Admin Center to see how many users are logging in over a particular period of time. So that's really the kind of the main way what most people do. But then on the flip side, there is pay-as-you-go pricing as well. Now the pay-as-you-go pricing is much more expensive per user, but it will scale based on how many users log in. So the more users that log in, then you just basically pay for what you use, but you'll end up paying more. So think about this structure is kind of like your Netflix subscription. You pay whatever it is these days, $25 a month, whether you watch one show or you binge watch everything. That's sort of how, but you kind of pay that flat rate, but here you are limited of what you can see. Or if you do the pay as you go, where it's like buying gas, you kind of burn up what you did, but it's a lot more expensive. So hopefully that kind of explains it. The other thing I want to talk about is this is tiered. So if you buy, I think once you get over that 1,000 user mark, the price per user will begin to drop. And as it gets bigger, the price per user drops. Yes, you're paying more, but you're getting more capacity. The other thing too is the more user licenses. So if you have a website that you're going to get 1 million users and you buy the licenses for those 1 million users, on the back end, Microsoft is going to put more RAM, more processing. So your site's going to be able to handle all of that extra traffic. And that's based on the licensing that you apply to your site.
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions out there?
Doesn't look like it, but
Right.
again, if anybody has questions later, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. More than happy to answer those.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Nick, for your time. We do appreciate it. And Nick and I look forward to seeing everyone in Toronto on November 26th. I will drop the link for the registration in the chat here. If you haven't had an opportunity yet, like Madison said, the seats are going quick. So take an opportunity today and get yourself registered. Again, thank you, Nick.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
Have a great day, everyone.
Right. Thanks, everybody.